record. Okay. I did post yesterday's recording. It's up there in two pieces. You'll see it as new construction contract to close, part 1 and part 2, because we ran out of time and wanted to keep going, so it just made it in 2 chunks. But I didn't want to take the time to stitch it together on YouTube. So today, what we're going to look at is we've gone through the timelines. Next week, what we're going to do is we're going to role play using those timelines with buyers, how to be able to present that information to a buyer in a format that makes sense to them using the contract documents, because that's really what they're going to be looking at as they're doing it. Michael's also getting our buyer and seller folders completed. We've got all the graphics and everything done. We've got the pages ready to print, and we have ordered folders to put them in that has prime real estate experts on the front of it. So a little single fold folder that looks nice. And you can just have a handful of those in your car with you or in your computer bag and use them when you need to. Hey, here's Heather. Dun, 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 dun. Maybe. So what we're going to go through today is, first off, a quick reminder on if you are in one of those situations where you can't get brokerments being a little fussy, or you just need a copy of the contract. When you come onto the MLS, the utahrealestate.com forms, URE Legacy Forms Library. And we're going to work with the contract today, so I'm just going to type in REPC, and you'll notice it doesn't really help much because there's way too many of them. But we're going to come down here to the real estate purchase contract. You can add more than one form to the packet. So if I want to add something else, like say the FHA VA loan addendum, I can put it on there too. Or well, if I can spell that correctly, secondary or backup contract. And create a packet. And this does allow you to fill it out on this, and then you can save it as a PDF. You will have in those packets, you'll actually have printed copy of this. Here's Brianna. And it's nice to have a printed copy of this when you're sitting down and talking with a buyer about what the deadlines are, because you can point in the contract to where the deadlines are, so they know what to expect and where the rules are that govern it. It's a little different with new construction because sometimes the deadlines are spread out throughout the contract, and you'll have to go in and find them. Now, Emory will, when a client goes under contract, Emory creates for them a calendar. It's a deadline list of what the deadlines are. And then 2 days before a deadline, she has a reminder email that goes out. So Jason's under contract. 2 days before, he gets the list of when the earnest money's due, the due diligence deadline, the financing and appraisal deadline, settlement deadline. Those are all in there in order, or disclosures, due diligence, financing, appraisal, and settlement. Those are all in there in order. And then 2 days before the day that it's due, they get an automated email reminder that the deadline's coming up. So under the contract, what is the first deadline date your buyers need to be aware of?
Earnest money.
Earnest money. When does that have to be turned in, Heather?
Within 4 days.
For business or calendar?
Calendar.
Okay, again, that's the one that we always have to remember. And so they put it in bold here. No later than 4 calendar days after acceptance. Is that set in stone?
No.
Okay, so can we negotiate that?
Yes.
How would you do that?
With an addendum.
Okay. If you know you're in a situation where it may not be possible to get 4 calendar days, particularly buyers out of state, then put an addendum in there to protect them. Why would we want to do that?
So that they're not in compliance.
If
So
they
they're
don't
not
get,
out of compliance.
yeah, we don't want them out of compliance. If they
Right.
don't get the earnest money to us and we don't have the receipt of earnest money to the list or the selling agent by 5 p.m. on day 4, we're technically in breach of contract.
Right.
And if a seller really wanted to put squeeze on them, could say, hey, you breached the contract, we're out.
Yep.
We have done that once. Day after our seller went under contract, a much better offer came in from somebody who hadn't even said anything about putting in an offer. And we're like, oh, wow. Well, their agent was lazy on following up on getting the earnest money, and they were a couple of days late. You're late, you're in breach. Contract has been breached, and we're going to somebody else. Okay, in the form of, and this is the other deadline that you need to keep kind of be aware of, how can they turn in, what means do we have for turning in the earnest money?
Personal check or cashier's check?
Okay, which is best?
Personal check,
Because
because it verifies you have money in your bank.
absolutely.
We
It's
also
not
have earnest.
Yep. You remember back on your classes when they talked about seasoning the money, knowing where it came from?
Yep.
This is where it's seasoned. Now we do also have earnest, which is a wire transfer. They're going to be paying a wire transfer fee on that. So if they're bringing a check in, just make arrangements. You can go pick it up. You just need to make sure we have it back here in the office by the deadline. Now, one recommendation is if you go to pick up a check, take a picture of it with your phone and send a text message to Michael with that picture attached to it. Michael, this is the check I just picked up. I'm bringing it into the office. Because if you're picking it up on day number 4, it might not make it into the office before the deadline. By you sending that to him, that's proof that you have received the earnest money, and you can pick up the check. We just have to get it, then you're just in the process of delivering it. But that way we have proof that we've received it, because you can fill out the receipt, and if the other side even wants proof, we've already got proof of it. Then when you get it here, then he's going to run it through its usual process of scanning it, making a digital copy. Okay. All right. From here, where do we go to find deadlines in the contract?
You have to scroll down closer to the end of the contract.
How close?
I don't know. I have to find it every time.
All the way at the end. It's the last one.
Paragraphs 24 and 25 have deadlines in them. 24 are the negotiable deadlines. You're right. And when you do it often enough, you'll get to remember where certain paragraphs are. You're right. Most like those of us who are visual, we're like, I don't know. It's at the bottom of the page. Right? There's a number in front of it. Who knew? Paragraph 24A through D. Now, the reason I get nerdy about this, and the reason that you'll see Amory will get nerdy about this, is when it comes time to renegotiate these during the course of a transaction using an addendum, the more specific you are with the wording on the addendum, the less ambiguity there is, the less future problems there are. So if you need to renegotiate a settlement deadline because life happened in the process, I'll get addendum that come in and just say settlement will be on, here's a date. that's not the way it's worded in the contract. So I always put as per paragraph 24D, settlement deadline shall be, and put the deadline. Settlement will be on, it doesn't state a deadline. It just states a day when they're going to be there. Or think they are, or hoping to be. Okay, seller disclosures. We've talked about these before. What are the two ways you can put dates in here?
You can type it or click on the calendar.
Okay, on this one and on Brokerman, you can click on, if you're going to put a specific date in there, then you can click on the day and it'll fill it in for you. Is there another way to put a date in there? Granny just nodded your head.
I didn't know that you could put it in there like that.
You can type on Brokermint and on the MLS, you can go in and type it in that way. Now it's a contingent date because it's contingent on the acceptance. But if you read the listing remarks and it says, please allow 48 hours for response. I've either got to think of what day I want it to be and add 2 days, or this way, whatever day we actually get acceptance, now the clock starts. How long should we provide the seller in order to provide that disclosure?
Like 10 days, right?
For disclosures?
Oh, no, for disclosures is 5 days. And then like 10 days for the due diligence deadline.
Okay. Yeah. Seller disclosures, and we've had the conversation once before, especially on a weekend, they could be providing, they could have means of providing the property condition disclosures, any of those, but we still have to get our title report to them, and they have to get their updated title report to us. And always take a look at the calendar in terms of holidays. Thanksgiving, Rex, contract dates. It's a Thursday. Is anybody showing up Friday?
You just make it for that next Monday.
Yeah. Shoot for the Monday or Tuesday. Same with New Year's. New Year's can wreck. New Year's and Christmas, when they're in the middle of a week, can really wreak havoc on your calendar. Because even though the office is really probably closed one day, the day before and the day after are kind of a loss. And let's hear it for July in Utah. Okay, so be aware of those as you're looking at that. I always do what I can to try to avoid having a deadline come up on a Saturday or Sunday.
That's a good idea.
Heather, you had something to say?
That's a good idea.
Okay. Why would you do that?
Saturday and Sunday, people are busy, so you don't want to put extra on their plate during the weekend. You want them to get it done during the week.
Yeah, especially something like a due diligence deadline. I'm okay with it being on a Saturday, but let's be honest, if it's on a Sunday, nothing's going to happen that day.
Right.
Okay. Settlement deadline. Yeah, if it falls on a Sunday, really it just became Friday the 2 days before.
Yeah.
Settlement deadline, or having settlement on a Friday, good practice is to try to avoid that if you can, just because we run into that funding and recording situation. If it doesn't fund and record by Friday afternoon, then when's it probably going to be processed?
Monday.
Yeah. And now where's your buyer all weekend?
not super happy.
because
They want to move on the weekend.
and they're not moving.
Right.
They got their moving truck and stack of pizzas for the neighbors ready to go, and they're out.
Yep.
So 5 days for disclosures, due diligence on a existing residential home. You walk through it with the buyer. It's from what you have seen, it appears to be in good condition. How long would you usually recommend for a due diligence period?
I think a week.
So a week to get the inspection done?
Yeah.
Mindy, what do you think?
We did 10 days, but my buyer was in a hurry.
Okay.
I would
And I
say
think
10
I've
to
heard
14
14.
days.
So Brianna, you were saying
10 to 14 days.
10 to 14 days. Jason, what are your thoughts?
I think on my last one it was 7 days, but I guess it depends on the situation. I would lean towards more 10, but I guess it depends how quickly you want to close, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, and Michael, what are your thoughts on that one?
It depends. I remember the first one that I did, they were all in a big rush, so we moved pretty quickly on it. So I guess got a case by case type thing.
Okay. Case by case, it's going to depend on how much of a hurry they're in. And how in depth of an inspection are they going to do? If they're just going to do a physical inspection, we can usually get those scheduled within 48 hours. 72 if it's a weekend. But if they add mold, meth, or radon to that, I just added 3 days to getting that report back.
We're doing mold and meth on our testing, and it actually takes 5 days to get that back right now.
Wow. The biggest problem with meth is that there's a limited number of labs in the state of Utah that are certified to do it. And if they get busy, you can pay for a rush. Great, you may move it up a day, but you just don't, you just add it to your cost. So yeah, plan if they're doing mold, meth, or radon, tell them it's going to be 3 to 5 days. So they can plan ahead that way. Also, if they're looking into anything unique, we had a buyer, she had a piano studio. She taught piano. And the home she was looking at, the big selling point for it was it had a huge basement, room for plenty of piano students. She contacted Draper City because it happened to be on Draper's side of 123rd South. Draper told her she had to have a certain amount of parking space off street for parents to pick up their students. She said, okay, it's got a 3-car garage and an extra deep driveway. How many parking spots do I need? And they told her she needed like 10 or 12.
Wow.
So even though everything about the house worked, except the driveway, that was her due diligence period. She had to look into that. But if she'd been north of 123rd, Sandy didn't care. But since she was the buyer, she was responsible for finding that out. She actually looked into that before we put an offer in because she knew from prior experience it could be an issue. So we did some due diligence before putting in the offer. Wasn't going to work. Not going to, not put in the offer. Financing and appraisal deadline. Can you leave this one blank?
No.
Thoughts on that one?
I mean, what if they don't want to get an appraisal? And
Why
what
would
if
they
they're
not?
doing cash?
If they're paying
in that
cash
case.
and don't need an appraisal, do they need a deadline on financing an appraisal?
No.
It's true.
No. So you will see, as a listing agent, you'll see offers come in March without having a financing and appraisal deadline because it is a cash offer. That means you're going to be looking close up here at paragraph 2 because it won't have anything in here about financing. There won't be a new loan or seller finance. It'll have the earnest money deposit, the balance due at cash at settlement, and the purchase price. That's all that has to be filled in. if you see this and it's written like it's a cash offer and come down here and see a financing and appraisal deadline, we have had a couple of times investors try to sneak it through that they were using a non-traditional lender, sometimes called a hard money loan, investor lender. They were going to pay cash. They would get the cash from the investor to pay for the home, but the investors still wanted an appraisal on the property to make sure that their money was going into something that had value. From the seller's perspective, that really no longer was a cash offer. That really was a financed offer, hidden as a cash offer. Because the buyer could have still walked away if it didn't appraise. They tried to sneak one in.
Yeah.
Okay. Settlement, in the event that you do have to have, obviously most of ours right now are being financed. About how long out do they need to get that done?
3 weeks.
Yeah, how fast do you want to go? You can't order an appraisal and an inspection at the same time. That just means if your buyer ends up canceling, they've paid for an appraisal that they won't be using. So it's up to them. Settlement deadline. This is a good conversation to have with their loan officer before you start putting in offers. How long the loan officer feels like they can get everything done. Jason, as an underwriter, how did you feel when a loan officer started leaning on you to I got to get this done. I got to get this done. Can you just hurry up and get this done?
I've got 10 other files I have to get done today. You'll get rush requests, but it's a matter of the loan officer might have that one deal that as an underwriter, I'm dealing with like 20 loan officers, so it's sometimes the volume doesn't allow you to, but they can get a rush, they can always rush it through, but definitely makes it more stressful.
Yeah. So be reasonable about it. And different loans can, because of extra steps, can take longer. FHA has a couple of additional steps. VA has a couple of additional steps. USDA has a whole bunch of additional steps they have to go through. So traditionally, 28 days on an FHA or VA traditionally has been, with a lender that knows what they're doing, we've been able to do. I have seen FHA and VA closed faster if they've really gone through the pre-approval and really all they're waiting for is the offer on a good solid house. So you're just waiting on the appraisal report in. I've seen FHA close in 18 days. Because all the headache work was done in advance. And Jason, as the underwriter, is just waiting to see the contract come in. Everything else is done. And he's looking for a good, clean contract that he's not going to have to chase paperwork down. Right, Jason?
Right. Yeah.
As soon as you have to request any additional paperwork, what tends to happen at the timeline on that file?
Yeah, it just goes on and on because then if you get conditions that create other conditions, it just gets worse and worse.
Yeah. If the buyer doesn't respond in a timely manner, we can't get the paperwork. My worst condition was we had to get a verification of employment from the U.S. military because he was finishing, my buyer was finishing a TDY. His unit had been activated. And the U.S. Postal Service. Two of the worst bureaucracies in the American government, and we had to get paperwork from both at the same time. Because there was going to be a 2-week difference between when he got out, left Hawaii to come back to Utah, and started working at the post office, and the underwriter had to have verification of some kind of an income during that time. So while we don't have direct communication with the underwriter, the loan officers that have worked with the same underwriters or work over and over, right, Jason? You kind of get a rhythm. You know which loan
Mhm.
officer is going to do it right. You also know which one's going to screw it up.
Yeah, yeah. You get the one file like, oh, not this deal, not this guy.
Yeah.
You
So
get to know a pattern, you know.
yeah, if the loan officer's got a good rhythm, then they'll have a good sense of how long to do that. Put for that. If it's cash and you're just doing the disclosures, the due diligence and settlement, that's as quick as you want to get it done. You don't have to wait for lending and underwriting. That's why you'll hear ads on the radio that they'll close in 5 to 7 days. That's basically as long as it takes for them to do a title search and get the paperwork. Are there any other deadlines in the contract?
If you have additional earnest money, right?
Yeah. You got this little hidden one right here, 8.4, the additional earnest money.
Oh,
This can easily get overlooked, can't it? If for some reason your buyer chooses to do additional earnest money, you got to keep that in your head as well. When is that going to be turned in? Because it's, if applicable, no later than the due diligence deadline or financing and appraisal deadline, whichever is later. Well, let's be honest, which one's usually the later of the two, due diligence or financing?
Financing.
Yeah. So watch for that hidden one in there. Another one to think about that we don't oftentimes think of as having a deadline, but needs to be taken care of in a timely manner is right here.
oh yeah.
If a home warranty is being ordered, making sure it gets ordered in time that it can be paid for at settlement, so it become active at settlement. There's also this one right here that tends to be forgotten because it doesn't have its own spot on the calendar. Final pre-settlement walkthrough inspection. Your buyer has the right to walk through the property again before closing, but you notice it says no earlier than 7 days prior to the settlement deadline and upon reasonable notice and reasonable time. So in that last week, they can still go in and make sure the home is in the condition it was in when they saw it to begin with. Because the home has to be delivered to them in the condition it was in when they went under contract. This is also typically when they go in and start measuring for where are the couches going to go and the bed's going to go, and have a conversation about what color that hideous lime green wall is going to be when we get done painting. They have that opportunity. Embry follows up with them and sends them a reminder. You have this opportunity for a final walkthrough. Do you want to take it? If you do, let's get that scheduled. So those kind of get hidden in there. So keep those in mind. Getting your home warranty ordered and getting that final walkthrough. By the way, if you go through on this final walkthrough and you're inside of the 7 days and there's a massive hole in the wall that wasn't there when you went under contract, what recourse do you have?
If you're doing the final inspection and there's a hole in the wall that wasn't there previously, you can still back out because or you can require them to fix it before you go to settlement, right?
Correct. The contract requires that the home has to be broom swept and clean and in the condition it was in when they went under contract. Any significant damage other than regular wear and tear, the seller can be held liable for completion of repairs prior to settlement or after settlement, but put it in a specific addendum to the contract. And if it's going to be taken care of after settlement, you put right in there, this these terms shall survive settlement. That means they still happen after closing. Because the contract's written that settlement, it's done. It's fulfilled its responsibilities. Okay. Any questions on deadlines? I'm getting it now. We got this from Brianna. Okay. So tomorrow we'll spend some more time with the contract. Next week, we're going to do some role playing with how to present the contract to your clients. Obviously, Tuesday, we're not going to have training because Tuesday is our open house. So I will send out the list of classes tomorrow. Okay, we're down to less than a minute. Bree, you and I'm gonna send you another link in just a second. Okay.
Thank you so much, Darren.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, Darren.